Hey, hello, this is Professor Game, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking who bring us the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration to help us in the process of getting students to learn what we teach. And I'm Rob Alvarez. I work at IE Business School Publishing, where we create interactive and engaging learning materials.
And today we have Horst Streck. Horst, are you prepared to engage?
Pretty much. I have a full stomach, so we can talk for hours now.
Survival mode is on. So
yes,
Horst, in his bio, we can see that after changing from a student life to a working career, he worked as an information expert in the Amsterdam local authorities for over 15 years. And in 2001, he founded I Sioux Media Productions with two partners. Then the company made its first step as a game developer. And in 2007, they entered the casual games arena with the brand Youdagames. Youdagames won the Dutch Game Award in 2008 with two games and became the best up-and-coming developer in 2009 in Seattle. As a CEO, Horst Streck was the executive producer and responsible for building strong relations with partners and distributors. That sounds very serious. And in 2012, he stepped down as a CEO to become a member of the advisory board. That's where he decided to follow his heart and started a new venture which is all about gamification. And in 2004, he was selected as a chairman for the Dutch Games Association. So for the last 2 years, he's been in the mission of renewing the educational system by the use of gamification. So completely aligned with his podcast, Professor Game. Horst, so is there anything I missed? Anything else you want to add to that introduction?
No, I hate those things because I'm from nature a modest guy, and you always have to brag a little bit about yourself. It's all true, by the way, but I don't like hearing it.
I hope
for some reason. Yeah, there's everything is exactly how it is.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. So Horst, the first thing we would like to know, and it's especially to get to know what it looks like to be Horst, and it's what does a regular day with you look like, if there's such a thing as a regular day?
No, not for me. Maybe the last 2 years were the most regular ones I've had because I teach applied university students into the art of gamification business. So not only create great projects, but also try to make money with them. We combine that in a special curriculum over 6 months, and the complete curriculum is turned into a real-life game.
Wow.
So then I have more regular days, which I, of course, meet the students every day to see how they're doing. And we created more or less a pull mechanism, so I don't push knowledge towards them. Within the process, they pull it out of me because they need it at a certain point throughout the process. And that was really enjoyable. So I still didn't know exactly what was waiting for me on a regular day, but it was more regular than normal. Now I have a couple of weeks off, and of course still doing a lot of stuff. And normally during the week I can give presentations, lectures, workshops, advise people, anything during the week at any given day.
That's absolutely fantastic, and it sounds super, super exciting, Horst.
I'm
going to ask you for some tips. We'll talk about it after the interview regarding your classes, because I might be starting having a session around this, not too far in the future.
Oh, great. Good to hear.
Now, Horst, we want you to tell us a story, because we're all about stories in this podcast, especially at the beginning of the podcast. And we want you to tell us a story of something that perhaps you would like to call your favorite fail, that first attempt in learning, or something that, when you were creating a game or a gamified experience that you would like to call your favorite failure, because perhaps it set you up for future success because of the learnings, because of what you learned through that experience, or perhaps because it literally took you in the path of a success in the future.
Well, it's a funny fail. It doesn't have to do much with gamification or games. A little bit of games. When in 2009 we got the reward of upcoming developer, we were just pretty new at the playing field, and it was a big thing, and we just didn't know. So we came there in Seattle unprepared with pretty casual clothes, and we won that thing. And we didn't make enough promotion about it as we could have done. And it was really a fail that I never will make again. I will make sure that if I get an award for something, that I'm pretty clear what it is.
If you're going to be recognized, at least know what you're going to be recognized for.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. So that was at the end. It was funny, of course, but now I know it meant a lot. And there was no Dutch company, whoever, as I know of, who got that award. So it was a pretty big thing. And the other thing, but that's not with my students, what I told you about the teaching them by let them play a real life game. I love failures there. I just love them. It gives me an opportunity to teach them something.
That makes a lot of sense. Is there any failure that you can remember that you can give us take us to the ground level and tell us the story of what you with your students learned of that failure?
Failures that they have, you mean?
Yeah, that which you were referring to.
That can be really everything. So it's hard to pull out one example, but there's a very interesting one from a girl that doesn't talk that much, but is a great artist. So she makes great art, and with a lot of great artists, they don't have to be that social, of course. She wasn't. But at the end of the course, we have a talk with everybody, and she just had a hard time expressing herself vocally. So I don't know how it came together, but she said, I said, picture it and tell them what you see. And then the words came out really beautiful and very, very easily towards her. And of course, that's logical because she is an artist. So she's more visual than she would be good with words. So that was a very interesting, I don't know if you could call it a failure from her side, but really there's a lesson there. And on other things in general, when they make a wrong business decision, first let them try it, and then I say, "What's your market? Why do you think it's that big? On what is your calculation? What's your calculation based on, etc., etc." And when they make mistakes, it's easier to explain them, and I never mind if they have mistakes because I'm here to help them, right? So then I ask them, in certain situations, we go through it again together. And then when they recognize their own failure or miscalculation or whatever you call it, then it's in their head forever.
Yeah,
so that's the most important thing.
Yeah, one of the things that we've discussed before in this podcast, and when we talk about the fails, those first attempts at learning, is precisely that the way that the things are set up now. It's very harsh for a student to fail, and gamification is an amazing alternative to let people learn from failure, because as you just said, and I'm convinced this is something I really live for, is that we learn so much when we fail. When we succeed, it's amazing, and that's what everybody's looking for, of course. But having failure and having failure in your life, in a project, it's an amazing learning experience that for sure can set you up for a future success. And that's something I truly believe in.
Completely true. In the Netherlands, it's more when you fail. It's a bad thing always.
Yeah,
and
that's pretty common in many
that's
parts
pretty
of the
common.
world.
But also as a business, if you fail as a business, okay, then you're probably not a good businessman. And that's something really positive about the United States. If you fail over there, then they're more likely to believe that you will succeed now.
I would say there's a mix. I mean, there's a culture that's coming up because of the startups and all this culture that's coming up. And there's like a subculture in the US that failing is okay. But I do have to say that in general, it's not very well accepted either. I mean, I haven't lived there, but what I've seen in educational settings, what I've seen in many settings is that it's not as accepted as you wish. However, there is a quote I saw from an experience I heard in another podcast. A guy saying, there was this investor. He said, "Well, I invested let's say $2 million in this startup, in this entrepreneur." because I believed in him. I saw his passion. His project was interesting. So I invested $2 million. The company absolutely flunked and failed. I mean, they literally lost every single penny that they put into that investment. So the guy who was interviewing says something like, "Oh, so you definitely didn't invest in him again." And the investor said, "Are you kidding me? I invested $2 million in this guy's education, and I'm going to let him go?" I mean, that's one of the best investments I've made. Of course, I'm going to invest again in him. I'm going to push him to do something new. I'm going to push him to do something great, and I'm going to be the first guy to invest in his new startup.
That's funny. No, I meant with America, not the students, by the way. Because I think I think failure still is a thing over there. It's the same as here, but I mean the investors and startups.
Yeah.
So
no, that's completely true.
Yeah, and that's really different here. So they don't want you to fail, and if you fail again, you're marked for life, probably. Within the business world, not as a student.
Yeah, fantastic. Horst, I want to shift now, and instead of going for the fails, I would like to go for a big success or something that you would like to brag about, even if you may. And it's any big challenge that you faced, and you said, "Wow, this was something I didn't really." When I approached it first, and I said, "Wow, this is something very interesting to approach," but it was difficult. It was a big challenge, but that then you were able to actually solve using games, gamification, game thinking, you name it. So take us through that story. How was that process of going from a big challenge to actually turning it into a big success?
Let me see, because this was before I even know about gamification, but we did it anyway. But because the word wasn't around yet, gamification didn't exist as how do you call it, as a phenomenon, as a thing actually. And we got an order from a television company, and he asked us to, probably the program Idols.
Okay.
From a long time ago. Do you know that singing program on television, Idols, more or less the same thing as the Voice of Holland or the Voice of Spain.
Yeah, Italy's Got Talent, UK's Got Talent, Britain's Got Talent, or whatever.
Exactly, it was something like that. But it was over, let's say, I think 15 years ago, probably 15. Okay. And they want us to make something that contestants could also do an audition online or by phone. So that was a big challenge with the technique these days. So because we also needed to make a business model behind it that was engaging enough for a large crowd of people, of course. So what we did those days is they could sing they could do auditions, so basically sing into their phones, and it was a paid number. And that small sound file would automatically be uploaded to the internet, and then other people could listen to it and could vote again with an SMS on the phone. So the business model was the phone, basically, because they have to pay for the SMS and they have to pay if they want to put in a song.
Win-win situation.
A win-win, yeah, and of course, immediately business model. So when I explained the plan, we got the order, but I didn't really know at that time if we could handle that. So that was a lot of sweat and a lot of not sleeping at night and stuff like that. But at the end, with a lot of challenges on our way, we were able to bring that one to a good end.
Fantastic. That's an incredible story. So I think what my key takeaway here is always be open to what can happen. I mean, don't have something fixed in your mind, like this is the thing that we're going to do. And even if there's somebody asking you to design something one way, always keep your mind open as much as you can and find creative solutions. Find something different that might be actually the key to your success as a gamification designer. Yeah,
I agree. And also, don't be afraid too much. Because if I were afraid at that moment, I wouldn't got the order.
Yeah.
And that order was huge for us. So
take the leap.
Yeah, take the leap. don't play it safe all the time because you won't get anywhere.
Absolutely. Horst, now that we're talking about this, I would like to know if there's any sort of process that you follow, or is there any system that you follow when you want to create a solution in gamification. And now that you've been spending 2 of your last years doing gamification for education, if you have anything that you could share that is your process for creating gamification in education, it would be amazing.
Yeah, I use my own method, which is called protoplay. That is a method I use when I advise organization, mostly on a strategic level, how to implement game elements. So basically gamification. And before I do anything, I want to go with them to the essence of the problem. Probably I implemented within the process I do, the golden circle. Probably you've heard about it from Simon Sinek. That method I introduced there. So we go really to the essence, why people want to change anything before I start anything. That's important because when you go really deep, then I found out that before thinking of a solution, why do you want to solve that? What is the deeper thought about it? What's the why around this project? Then if you come to the phase in where you get to work on the solution, you get a better solution because you have the problem and the essence of the problem. You have a much better picture of it.
Yeah, you can't find a solution to a problem you don't understand, or you don't know what is the problem. You can't just come with a solution for a problem that's not there.
No, and it's not only to understand the problem, because that takes questions, but really more about it's even more about emotions. Why do you need that so much? Why are you standing up each day? Why is this needed? What do you feel about it when you want to do it? And when you go in deeper to the essence of the thoughts of people, they are more open, also creatively, to in a later stage. First of all, to define the problem much better, because it's more based on trust when you are together in the program. And later on, you get a much better solution because you're more open to a lot of things. And that's very important, because if people are closed and not opening up during such a process, you will see it in the final product. It won't work.
Yeah, taking into account the emotions, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Also the people that give you the order, right? And then it's a 5-step phase. So we start with, which I call the entity outline. That's what I just talked about. Then we have a phase which is called the game infusion. So we look at reality and see what part of games we need to infuse to make something incredible happen. After that, we prototype it. And after that, we start development. And then a very important thing to me, we always want to launch a new product properly. And if it is a product for consumers, it could be a really big launch. But also if it's for an organization internally, you have to prepare yourself how to communicate it internally so everybody will do with the product what they're supposed to do.
That makes a lot of sense. The communication campaign is fundamental. The advantage that we have in education is that at least the way the system is set up now, we almost have prisoners in our students.
Okay.
so we know that they will be there and they'll have to almost listen to us. What we want, and I think it's the next stage that is also very important, is we want them not just to hear that there's something going on, but we want them to actually listen, to be engaged, to be motivated, and to actually learn, because that's the reason ultimately that they get into any sort of education, whether formal or informal.
Exactly. So, and what I use, the 3 phases of my method, I use that with students. So, and I recognize the same thing as you do. The trigger is it's really all about motivation. If you have a group of students that are completely motivated, as a teacher, you can look at them at the sideline. They will manage. They will manage by themselves even. So we always focus on trying to keep them motivated or help them be motivated.
Yeah, a past guest. I don't know if you've heard of Scott Hebert he's from Canada. He does some incredible things in his classroom. He says, and in his book, he talks about the engagement crisis in education, or I would also call it the motivation crisis in education, which is in many places, having education is not motivating enough for many people, and there's a crisis there, and that there's something. The main problem is that in general we don't think that there is that problem, and so we don't address it. So I'm sure and I'm convinced that gamification is the solution to that problem, and that there's incredible people doing amazing things in that respect, and it's something I invite all of our engagers, the listeners of this show, to take into account.
Yeah, well, we noticed that we started with 10 students, and at the 20 students in total. That's what we started with, and when we did the curriculum within 1.5 years, we ended up with 67 students.
Well, you've solved the engagement crisis in your subject for sure.
Yeah, it looks like it. It's of course not perfect yet, but I know we have the right. I know for sure we have the right direction. And
and it will never be perfect, and that's something that I always like to talk about, because it will never be perfect, and that's a reason to launch it, even though you know it's not perfect, and that you will be able to improve it. Because if you don't start, you'll never launch it, and if you never launch it, nobody's going to benefit from that.
And exactly that, we improved it every single time, because it's in my genes. When you were in the gaming industry so long, you know that iteration process, right? So you look carefully to what you're doing and what happens, what it does with the students. And next time you will improve those things that weren't working as you hoped they would be. So now we were able to improve it every time we gave a new one. And that's something that you don't see in traditional education. Some programs run for years. Really the same thing for years, over and over again. I never did the same thing in every, we call them minors, in every minor we did. It's a period of half a year. None of these half years are the same. We just improved it every time.
Yeah, and it's also it's something important to recognize as well, that it's true that changing it every single time is more work. And maybe you don't. I mean, I admire your passion and your drive to do it every single time, and that's amazing. However, even if you don't change it every single time, you might want to experiment and say, well, this cohort, it went well. Let me check how it goes with the next one and see what I can improve. Or maybe right now I'm in a pretty sweet spot. Or even if it doesn't go very well, if you don't think that an overhaul is needed, maybe you can test it out with another cohort and see what happens. Maybe they love it. So that's something fundamental, to be experimenting and to be checking how things are going. And if you can, you can improve them as well. And maybe it's not a huge, complete change of the whole thing, but maybe it's a small tweak that you make to your processes, and that can be a complete game changer for your gamification in the classroom.
I completely agree. But what I'm doing might sound strange to people, but I think it's now in my genes. I'm used to it. So
to the updates also, in the game.
Yeah, to the updates, and it's I keep the good, of course. So if I do something, I keep the good. I never throw them away. But those things I that doesn't work as well as I thought they should, I change them automatically almost.
Yeah.
So it's not to me. It doesn't sound. To me, it sounds like how it should be.
That's it. And now, Horst, we are going to move into what we call the second part of the interview. we ran out of stories almost, and we're going to go into something that's a bit more quicker answers. So it's less about the story and more about providing some quick value to the engagers, to the listeners. So the first thing that we would like to know is, what do you consider is something that any gamification project could benefit from? Maybe something that you might call a best practice. It doesn't have to be the absolute, if you have this, it's the absolute secret recipe, but maybe something that you say, well, if you can put this inside your project, it's certainly going to benefit from that.
Get inside the skin of your player.
Absolutely.
That's for me the most important one.
I couldn't agree more. Horst, what's your favorite game?
My favorite game is probably still FIFA. I have it on my iPad, and I still play that game. An old one, by the way, but I still play that game.
I have to remember that there's an Instagram account that they make fun of like gaming and the gaming industry in general, and they say, all those games in the world, and these guys just want to play FIFA.
yeah, it's terrible, isn't it?
I have to agree that there's many more outside, but I also have to agree that FIFA is an amazing game. I mean, I love football. I mean, playing those games is absolutely exciting, and scoring goals and looking at all these famous players and playing with them is also very, very exciting.
Yeah, and from the old days, I can mention a game called Tiny Wings. Because the mechanics of that game, it was a game you could play on your iPhone. The mechanics of the game were just incredibly good. So I love that one as well. A really easy game, everybody can play it, but you can also put it down whenever you want. So that was good that time for me.
That's great. That's important for a game as well. Horst, is there anybody that you would like to hear interviewed in Professor Game?
Like to hear interviewed? Oh.
Yeah, instead of Horst today, tomorrow, who would you like to listen to?
To listen to, yeah. Somebody affordable, or you don't mind?
This is the Santa Claus letter. I mean, you can try to shoot for. I mean, we had I think it was Bernardo, the one who was talking about Miyamoto, the Nintendo, the Nintendo designer. So I mean, we can shoot for the moon. At least we'll land among the stars, as they say.
Yeah. I always love the talks of Jane McConigal.
Yeah.
So that would be one. I've listened to her, and she has some amazing thoughts about many things.
I have to say that Jane is a recurring answer when I ask this question.
Yeah,
for sure. When I do get a hold of her, I'm gonna tell her, look, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, all these people, not only guys and gals as well, have asked for Jane McGonigal. So I'm sure we'll have her on the show soon.
Yeah,
enough.
because she's really good in talking and presenting the things that she does. She does that very well.
Yeah,
and
TED Talks and the books are amazing. Absolutely.
Exactly. And but I forgot his name. I'm terrible at names. But the writer of the book Drive.
Daniel Pink?
Yes, that's him. I would love to hear him talk, because I don't know him personally, but I read his book, and it's really amazing stuff.
Yeah, they say that if you read a book from a guy who knows a lot, he's kind of your virtual mentor. So you kind of know him by now. Yeah. Oh, that's a nice remark. I will remember that one. What would you say is your superpower in gamification or game design? What's your sweet spot?
I think empathy.
So that's very aligned with the best practice. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, exactly. It's if you have that, it makes it a lot easier to really design a good gamification concept. It's always about people.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Now we're going to have what we call the random question. It's semi-random in the sense that if somebody just asks, "What's your name?" I'm not going to let that question pass through. But I don't know which is the question that's going to come up, and engagers as well. Horst has no idea what's coming up. I at least have read them before arriving to this point. I don't know which one, but I know which ones are available. So I'm going to click here, and we're going to get a random... Well, this actually makes sense with what we've been talking about. This is a short question, but it's about emotions that you spoke about previously. So it's very short and very sweet as well. And the question is, how can we manage emotions using games and gamification? So take whatever angle you want at that question, because I also acknowledge it's pretty broad.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can manage them, but you can design for an emotion you want to happen. Okay. Of course, we will never be 100% sure or certain that emotion will arise when somebody does the thing you've designed for it. But we can design for an emotion and hope for it, that it will happen. And a good game designer, he will do a better job at that. It's about the experience. Well, and how can you create these emotions? Make something very hard to do, and you have frustration, right? Make it at a certain point in time, make something less difficult but still appealing, so you can get a little bit at ease and gives you the feeling that you're good at something. You can give somebody a reward on a point within the thing you've designed that he doesn't expect it. So then you get a surprise. So there are many things. You can put pressure on people so they feel a little bit stressed by putting in a counter, a time counter. So you still have 10 seconds left, but you're not done yet. So you can do many, many, many things.
Yeah, I completely agree. That makes a lot of sense. So finally, Horst, this has been an amazing interview, but I want to ask you for a final piece of advice, especially if you want people to learn more about how gamification can be used in education, or how can they maybe approach your systems. So any final piece of advice, then how can we connect with you, and we'll say game over.
Okay. Any piece of advice. Always follow your own thinking as well within the stuff. You can learn a lot from other people, but use your own filter in all the information you got out there and do your own thing with it. And the thing you make has to be, I think the most important probably has to be meaningful for the player within the game you've designed.
Absolutely.
So if you have those connections together, then you're up to a success.
Then finally, how can we connect with you? And then we'll say goodbye.
Okay, you can connect with me on Twitter, Gamifier1. I can be found by Gamifier on Facebook, LinkedIn by my name, Horst Streck. And I have an email, which is horst@gamifier.com.
Okay, fantastic. So, Horst, thank you very much for this interview. You can find any of the things that we've been talking about in the show notes at professorgame.com. And we'll see you next time. It's game over.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Hey, Engagers. Thank you for listening to Professor Game Podcast. I hope you enjoyed our interview with Horst Streck. If you want more details, go to professorgame.com/podcast/022. That's 022. There, you can also subscribe, and that way we can be in contact and you will have exclusive access to opportunities that Professor Game might have for you. Hey, before you continue on to your next mission, would you like to know how to use data to change behavior using gamification? Well, then listen to the next episode of Professor Game with Michael Wu. See you there!